What's the hubbub? The WB and Paramount separation to get merger done? I'll explain what that means soon. James Gunn's DCU is moving forward, and reports are looking way up for the long term, and Man of Tomorrow could change everything. There may be no better snapshot of where DC stands right now than this. James Gunn's DC universe is expanding, while Zack Snyder is still looking for a distributor for his next movie. Lanterns is reportedly performing strongly on HBO Max after securing the #1 spot on it. Man of Tomorrow is shaping up to be a major DCU crossover, and Gunn is pushing back against rumors that the Paramount-Warner Bros. Situation has put his projects on hold. Meanwhile, Zack Snyder's completed The Last Photograph still reportedly has no US distributor. And that contrast tells us something important about the current state of DC. Gunn's DCU doesn't appear to be going anywhere. There was never really solid evidence that Paramount intended to simply drop James Gunn and Peter Safran. In fact, the direction of the proposed Paramount-Warner Bros. Structure suggests the opposite. California Attorney General Rob Bonta and a coalition of state officials are demanding that Paramount keep the Warner Bros. Movie studio structurally separate as a condition for any potential merger settlement. If the deal goes through, it now seems likely that Paramount and Warner Bros. Are expected to continue operating as separate studios, with a commitment to produce theatrical films from each studio every year. The plan also calls for movies to receive full 45-day theatrical windows before becoming available on premium video on demand, with longer theatrical runs for movies that become major hits. That's important because this isn't a plan built around shutting Warner Bros. Down. It's a plan built around making more movies, and DC is obviously one of Warner Bros.' biggest theatrical assets. Gunn is also shooting down the Batman delay rumors. Then there are the rumors that the corporate situation could delay or freeze the brave and the bold. Not so fast, comic book news Bible thumpers. Gunn has pushed back on that. He has said that nothing is on hold, pushing back against the idea that the corporate situation has frozen the DCU. So right now, there is no good reason to assume that Batman is suddenly being delayed because of the corporate deal. And that brings us to the much bigger story, Superman, Man of Tomorrow. Man of Tomorrow is looking more and more larger in its scope. This movie could be much bigger than a normal Superman sequel. The confirmed or strongly reported characters include Superman, Supergirl, Green Lantern, Guy Gardner, Green Lantern John Stewart, Blue Beetle, Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, and then there are the rumors, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, Maxima, a Batman cameo. Even just the confirmed lineup is remarkable. Superman, Supergirl, 2 Green Lanterns, Blue Beetle, Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific. That's the DC universe starting to come together, riding the momentum of Lanterns. And I think there's a particularly interesting story that could connect many of these characters. LordTech could be a huge part of the plot. One possibility is that Man of Tomorrow explores LordTech and the corporate side of superheroism. Think about what that means. Instead of superheroes simply operating independently, some of them could be supported, equipped and marketed by a powerful corporation. They have advanced technology, they have corporate backing, they have public relations, they have carefully designed costumes, they have an image. In other words, they have become brands. And that's where Superman becomes an interesting contrast. Superman doesn't belong to a corporation. He doesn't need a sponsor. He doesn't need a marketing department. His identity isn't something a company gets to manufacture. The heroes could walk away. This is where the costume changes could become especially important. If LordTech represents the corporate side of superheroism, we could see some heroes eventually reject that system, and when they leave, they could return to their more traditional superhero costumes. That would be more than fan service. It could symbolize freedom. The corporate costume represents the hero the company wants the public to see. The traditional costume represents the hero choosing who they want to be. Imagine the movie beginning with heroes presented almost like corporate celebrities. Then something happens. They realize they're being controlled. They leave, and suddenly we see them in the classic costumes audiences associate with these characters. That's a very simple visual way of telling the audience. These heroes have taken their identities back. Blue Beetle and Mr. Terrific could be especially important. Blue Beetle is an obvious character to explore in this kind of story because technology is already central to Jaime Reyes. His powers come from alien technology, so putting him into a story about corporations controlling superhero technology could create an interesting conflict. Who controls the technology? Who controls the hero? And does having access to incredible technology mean you have to surrender part of your independence? Mr. Terrific could fit naturally into that story as well. He's one of DC's great technology-based heroes, but his intelligence and inventions aren't supposed to turn him into somebody else's corporate mascot. That gives both characters an obvious connection to the LordTech concept. And then we have the Green Lanterns. Guy Gardner and John Stewart could be another major bridge between Lanterns and Man of Tomorrow. Lanterns establishes the Green Lantern mythology inside this DCU. Then Man of Tomorrow can take those characters and put them into a much larger superhero story. That is how Gunn can expand the DCU without immediately jumping into another Justice League movie. First, establish individual heroes, then let those heroes cross paths, then let them discover that they're dealing with larger problems together. That's how a shared universe starts to feel like a universe. Batman is the big wild card. A Batman cameo in Man of Tomorrow remains a rumor, but it's easy to understand why people are speculating about it. If Superman, Supergirl, Green Lantern, Blue Beetle, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific are all becoming part of the same world, eventually Batman has to enter that conversation. But Gunn doesn't necessarily need to make Batman a major character in this movie. A brief appearance could establish that Bruce Wayne exists in this universe without stealing Superman's movie. Then, the brave and the bold can introduce Batman properly. That would probably be the smarter way to handle it. And this brings us back to Zack Snyder. Snyder's The Last Photograph has already been made, yet reports say the movie still hasn't found a US distributor. That's a remarkable position for a filmmaker with Snyder's profile, but it also demonstrates something important. The SnyderVerse is not coming back. At this point, the combination of Warner Bros. Moving forward with Gunn's DCU, the changing corporate structure, and Snyder's own position in Hollywood makes a full restoration of the old universe extremely unlikely. And there's another factor that shouldn't be ignored. Henry Cavill has moved on. Cavill has increasingly been appearing in projects outside the Superman role.
No one stays good in this one.
Including movies aimed at streaming audiences and new franchise opportunities, rather than returning to Superman. That doesn't erase what Cavill's Superman meant to fans. It doesn't make the Snyderverse movies disappear. But it does make a full restoration increasingly unrealistic. The industry has moved forward. Gunn's DCU is the current continuity. Snyder is working on his own projects, and Cavill is building a career outside of Superman. The real competition isn't Gunn versus Snyder, and that's probably the most important point. This doesn't have to become another argument about which filmmaker is better. The more interesting story is how different their situations have become. Snyder has a completed passion project that reportedly still needs a distributor. Gunn has a studio-backed universe with multiple interconnected projects moving forward, and the proposed Paramount-Warner Bros. Structure is designed around continuing to make theatrical movies, with Warner Bros. Remaining a distinct studio operation. So the question isn't really, is Snyder coming back? The answer appears to be no. The real question is, how big can Gunn's DCU become? And Man of Tomorrow may give us the answer, because if Man of Tomorrow really brings together Superman, Supergirl, Gardner, John Stewart, Blue Beetle, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific, while potentially adding Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, Maxima, or even Batman, then Gunn is no longer just establishing a Superman franchise. He's establishing a world. Yes, world building is key. And if LordTech is part of that story, there could be an even deeper theme. What happens when superheroes become corporate products? What happens when companies decide how heroes should look and operate? And what happens when those heroes finally say, "We're leaving"? That's where the traditional costumes could become one of the movie's most meaningful visual ideas. The corporate hero becomes the independent hero, the brand becomes the person. And Superman could be standing at the center of that transformation. That could make Man of Tomorrow much more than another superhero crossover. It could be about who owns the superhero. And if James Gunn pulls that off, this may be the movie where the DCU fully displays the feeling of being one connected universe, even with tonal variants. For now, the picture is becoming clearer. The Snyderverse isn't coming back. Gunn's DCU is moving forward. The Paramount-Warner Bros. Deal is going through structuring to hopefully pass antitrust legalities and the Clayton Act, designed to preserve two major theatrical studios and increase movie output as the outcome in such a case. Gunn says the DCU isn't on hold. Isn't he more tapped in, that drunken Matt McGloin of Cosmic Book News? Remember that guy praised Superman 2025 as great, and only switched it up when he figured out the Snyder cult grift?
Just got out of Superman for the second time. The first time I saw it in 3D, 4DX, so it was crazy with the seat moving and all that, so I wanted to see it a second time with a better screen in RPX, and it didn't disappoint. I liked it again. It's a real fun movie. You could bring your family, you could bring your kids. It's probably the best superhero movie I've seen in years. The summer of Superman is here. Go see it.
Now he's riding that and anti-woke agitators and influencers to clickbait returns. Small Snyderverse channels on YouTube, such as Mr. Phenom, literally just narrate his articles now for content. And Man of Tomorrow could be the film that proves just how ambitious this new DC universe really is. Look up, not back, as the DCU reaches new heights. With that, it's today's hubbub. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's topics. Please like and subscribe, And remember, no SnyderVerse, no problem.